Yo, today we have another newsletter, and the title is Changing Old Habits, a Method to Change Habits. Now, again, I'm recording this immediately after the last video because, I feel in a good mood and I just felt like doing another one. So let's get right into it. And it's related to the previous one, so there is some relation between the two. You'll see as you watch both videos. How do you change your habits? That is a question that many have, and there are many solutions, many different approaches. One method is switching the old with the new. Okay. The first step would be to identify your current habits and triggers. And I'll be honest, as I'm reading it, I'm figuring out what I wrote, because looking at this now, I can't remember it, and I haven't gone through it yet. So you're going to be going through it fresh from me. This means that you should pick the habit that you want to change and figure out what triggers what triggers you to want to do that. Okay. It may be as simple as being home alone, going out with friends, or listening to music. If you identify your habit and trigger, you have a starting point. Now, switching the old with the new, it was something that, thanks to people like James Clear, who wrote The Atomic Habit, and there are many other books that come to mind that helped with me understanding how habits are formed. And for example, as well, Stephen Covey with The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, they mention that habits are formed with cues, and they're triggers. There are certain things that trigger you to do certain actions repeatedly and over and over. And especially with James Clear, he had got me to understand that a great way to remove a habit is to replace it with something else that you think is better or that you prefer. And it's as opposed to rather than stripping away that habit and just leaving it there with this kind of a gap in that habit, in that habit that you took. Now you have a gap where you don't there's nothing there. It's easier most of the time to replace it with something, and before you know it, you'll be in the rhythm, because now you have something else that you're doing, and it gets your mind off your previous thing that you stopped, and you kind of now you have a new something in your program that you kind of makes things flush and smooth. The next step is to target what habit you want to change. So the first step I mentioned is to identify the habits and triggers. So identify what you want to change, and then identify what triggers you to do that sort of thing. The second thing is to target what habit you want to change and understand that. It is easy to say you want to remove a habit out of your life and move on, but it is more practical to replace it with something else. Maybe it's opposite or something similar. This requires insight into what you like and don't like, so take your time figuring out what you want to do. After you decide what you want habit. Okay, after you decide what you want, okay, that's a mistake. That's a mistake. That's actually a mistake. Last time it wasn't a mistake. This time it is. After you decide what habit you want to adopt, next is targeting your triggers. If you can tie your trigger to your new habit, then that could be a great way to slowly move away from linking it to your old habit. Yeah, so this is, for example, if being home alone is a trigger for that other habit, if you tie your new habit to this trigger of being home alone at this certain time of the day, for example, let's say 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. If you tie it to this new habit you're trying to change, it's an effective way to slowly switch you over to that new habit and not have it be a trigger for that old habit anymore. And if you're continuously reminding yourself and focusing on doing that change, once you make that change, it makes it very difficult to change back to your old ways. However, there is another circumstance. In cases that you cannot tie them together, it is better to prevent yourself from being exposed to your triggers too often. Be conscious about how you react to situations so that you can prevent yourself from falling back into your old habits. So, for example, let's say 7 to 9. is the trigger for you to do this habit. And this other habit that you're trying to change to is not a good enough trigger. It doesn't really link to this new habit. What you can do is from 7 to 9, find something to do that can stop you from being home alone or having idle time, so that it stops you from linking it to your old habit, from being a trigger to your old habit. Because most times removing the trigger itself is a great way to stop doing the habit. And for example with me, like being on my phone for too long, one thing that will stop me is having a walk outside or going to the gym, or writing up something. It stops me from going on social media and spending too much time. At least during my uni days, that's what helped quite a lot. And when I look back, so focus on the triggers. Don't focus at the head where the habit is, trying to stop that. Sometimes stopping the triggers, which is like the body, it can help you chop the body off, and then stop you from getting to that point of your habit. From here, you are in a good position. You have identified your old habit and triggers. You have targeted a new habit, and you are focusing on stopping your triggers leading you to old habits. So if everything went well, you are in a good position right now. Of course, theoretically, that's what's supposed to happen. Practically, things can go left or right, but in theory, things should be going well for you. Hopefully. Why does Siri activate? Now it is about learning more about ways to control your habits via resources using books like Atomic Habits or online articles. Practice what you can learn, and don't be afraid to go through trial and error, learning what works for you. You can change your old habits and grow exponentially. Best of luck. And I give a bro fist. Now, look, one of the most important lessons I've learned over my past 3 years is to adopting an attitude of trial and error for my own growth. Let me elaborate so I don't get confused on this. Basically, what this means is that every individual has things that work for them. Generally, you can give general advice, everyone can take it, but most cases, majority of the people will adopt it differently because we have our own way of thinking and acting. So, the best way to, in my opinion, to take on advice is, especially when it comes to mindset and physical stuff and actions and whatever, is to take it with a grain of salt sort of thing, where meaning that take it with the approach of, I'm going to use this information and apply it in a way that would benefit me and my understanding and my system, which is the way I function. And that is one of the best things I'd learned, because I'd rather on the other end of taking everything at face value and trying to apply it the exact same way they say, the exact same way they do, knowing that I'm different, but I'm trying to emulate them and be like them and etc. etc. Know that you have your own way of doing things, and that's the way to excel in your own way and shine in your own way and in your own light, because that's where you're best shining. Best of luck.